Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really digging into, well, the birth certificate of the United States, the Declaration of
Yeah.
Independence. Let's maybe set aside the fireworks and, the big historical moments for a bit. We want to get at the core ideas behind it all.
Yeah, the intellectual
Kind
foundations.
of like understanding the blueprint before looking at the finished house.
Exactly. This isn't just about reciting dates or who signed what. It's about the thinking, the arguments that convinced a bunch of colonies they could and should be independent,
We're going to unpack some pretty powerful concepts that were floating around then.
and see how they landed right in the Declaration's, well, very bold statements.
Okay, so where do we start with these core ideas? It feels like a lot traces back to the Enlightenment. What exactly was that period about?
Well, the Enlightenment happening roughly in the 1700s was this huge wave of new thinking, a real focus on reason, logic, and the rights of individuals.
Less about tradition and more about thinking things through.
That's a good way to put it. Instead of just accepting authority, kings, church, whatever, people started believing that, using reason, using science, you could actually improve society, solve problems.
Okay, so it wasn't just philosophical navel-gazing. It was about applying reason.
Definitely. And a really central idea that came out of this was natural rights.
Natural rights.
Yeah, the idea that every single person, just by being human, is born with certain fundamental rights. Rights that no one, not even a government, can just take away.
Rights you just have. Innate.
That's the heart of it. And, this really threw a wrench into the old ways of thinking about power.
How so?
Well, if people have these inherent rights, then where does a government get its legitimacy? It can't just be because, God said so or because your father was king.
Right.
Enlightenment thinkers started arguing that government power actually comes from the people themselves, the consent of the governed.
Okay, so the government exists to serve the people, not the other way around. This sounds like it connects directly to someone like John Locke.
Absolutely. John Locke, hugely influential English philosopher. His book, The Second Treatise on Government, published way back in 1689, actually, it really laid out so many ideas we see echoed in the Declaration.
Okay, so what are the key things from Locke we need to understand here?
Well, first and foremost, his take on natural rights. Locke specifically talked about rights to life, liberty, and property.
Life, liberty, and property. Okay, that sounds familiar, though slightly different from the Declaration's phrasing.
Very close, yeah. And Locke argued these aren't gifts from a ruler, they just exist naturally.
Okay, what else?
Then there's his idea of the social contract.
A social contract. Explain that a bit.
Sure. Locke suggested that people basically voluntarily agree to form governments. And why do they do that? Specifically to protect these natural rights, life, liberty, property.
So we give up a little bit of our absolute freedom.
Exactly. You trade some freedom for security and the protection of your essential rights by the government.
It's a deal then. A contract between the rulers and the ruled.
Precisely. But, and this is crucial, Locke argued it's a two-way street. If the government breaks its side of the bargain, if it starts violating those rights instead of protecting them,
Then what?
then the people have the right to change it. Or even, get rid of it entirely and set up a new government that will protect their rights.
Wow, okay. So that's the right to revolution, essentially.
That's the implication. Pretty radical stuff for the late 1600s and early 1700s. It gave people a philosophical basis to challenge authority if it became oppressive.
So Locke provided the theory, the justification.
Hmm.
But how did these ideas get out to, regular people in the colonies?
Well, that's where figures like Thomas Paine come in. He was brilliant at translating these maybe somewhat academic ideas into something fiery and accessible.
You mean common sense, that pamphlet.
Exactly. Common Sense, published right at the beginning of 1776, it was an absolute phenomenon, a runaway bestseller in the colonies.
What made it so impactful? What was Paine arguing?
Paine just went straight for the jugular, arguing against the whole idea of monarchy. He basically said it was ridiculous, illogical, against common sense for a king, someone who just inherited the job, to rule over people an ocean away.
He attacked the very concept of kingship.
Yes. He argued government should be based on reason, on the consent of the people, not just because someone was born into the right family. He painted the British monarchy as inherently corrupt and harmful to American interests.
So he took Locke's ideas and weaponized them, politically speaking, aimed directly at King George.
You could say that. And crucially, his language. It was so direct, so plain-spoken, no complex philosophy, just clear, forceful arguments that anybody could understand.
All right, not just for the elites.
Not at all. He spoke to the farmer, the artisan, the shopkeeper. He tapped into all the existing frustrations about taxes and lack of representation and basically said, look, the whole system is broken. It's time to break free.
It really shifted public opinion, didn't it?
Massively. It turned what might have felt like a series of squabbles into a fundamental fight for self-government. It made independence seem not just possible, but necessary, logical even.
Okay, so we have the philosophical background with Locke, the popular push with Paine.
Hmm.
Where does the actual government body, the Second Continental Congress, fit in?
Right. So the Second Continental Congress, this was the gathering of delegates from the 13 colonies acting as a sort of makeshift central government during the Revolution.
They were trying to manage the war effort.
Manage the war effort, coordinate defenses, handle diplomacy, all of it. And crucially, they were debating the path forward. Not everyone was initially on board with independence. Some still hoped for reconciliation with Britain.
But Paine's arguments and the ongoing conflict pushed them.
Exactly. As tensions escalated, and especially after common sense circulated, the momentum shifted decisively towards independence.
And they were the ones who finally voted for it.
Yes. After intense debates, in early July 1776, the Congress formally voted in favor of independence. A huge, world-changing decision. They knew they were putting everything on the line.
And once they made that decision, they needed to explain why.
Precisely. They couldn't just say, we're independent now. They needed a formal statement, a declaration, to justify their actions to the American people, to potential allies like France, and to the world.
So they formed a committee to write it.
They did. And that committee tasked Thomas Jefferson with drafting the document.
Jefferson. Why him?
Well, Jefferson, a delegate from Virginia, was known for his powerful writing style, his eloquence. He was also deeply steeped in Enlightenment thought, especially Locke's ideas. He was seen as someone who could articulate the colony's case effectively.
So he wasn't just inventing things. He was drawing on all these ideas we've been discussing.
Very much so. His genius was in synthesizing these concepts, natural rights, the social contract, the grievances against the king, into this concise, powerful, and frankly, beautifully written statement of principles and purpose.
Okay, let's talk about the Declaration itself. What were its main jobs, so to speak?
It really had two core functions. First, the obvious one, to formally announce that the 13 colonies were now independent states, separate from Great Britain, severing the ties.
The breakup letter.
Yeah, in a way. But second, and maybe even more significantly long-term, it laid out the reasons why. The philosophical justification for the split.
And this is where we get those famous lines.
Exactly. The preamble contains those immortal words. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
It's right out of the Enlightenment playbook, right? With a slight tweak from Locke's property to pursuit of happiness.
Precisely. It grounds the entire argument in these fundamental universal rights. Though we should always remember that all men had a tragically limited meaning for Jefferson and many of his contemporaries.
The crucial point, and the role of government.
It's right there, too, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed.
Consent of the governed. Back to Locke and popular sovereignty.
Absolutely. The power flows from the people, and the government's legitimate job is to protect their rights.
And then it follows up with that long list. The grievances against King George III. Why list them all out like that?
That section was the evidence, the proof. The colonists were essentially saying, here's why the social contract is broken. Here's how the king has violated our rights and failed to govern justly.
Like building a legal case.
Exactly. Each grievance detailed a specific action, imposing taxes without consent, stationing troops, cutting off trade, interfering with laws that they believed showed a deliberate pattern of abuse aimed at establishing, well, tyranny.
Let's focus on King George III for a second. He really becomes the focal point of blame in the document.
He does. He was the monarch, the head of the British state. From the colonists' viewpoint, he was the ultimate authority responsible for the oppressive policies they faced.
So even if Parliament passed the laws, they saw the king as enabling or directing it.
Yes, the Declaration portrays him as the driving force behind these actions, accusing him directly of seeking to establish an absolute tyranny over the colonies. It personalizes the conflict in many ways.
Which leads us to that word, tyranny. What did that really signify for them? It sounds very strong.
Oh, it was incredibly strong. Tyranny meant more than just bad government. It meant cruel, unjust, arbitrary rule. A ruler acting out of self-interest, ignoring the law and the rights of the people, exercising absolute power oppressively.
So calling the king a tyrant wasn't just name-calling. It was a specific political accusation.
Absolutely. It was accusing him of fundamentally breaking the social contract, of becoming illegitimate as a ruler because of his actions.
And the list of grievances was their justification for that accusation.
Precisely. They laid out the pattern. He has refused. He has forbidden. He has dissolved. Each point intended to demonstrate that this wasn't just a disagreement, but a calculated effort to destroy their liberties, making revolution the only option left.
Right. They felt they had no other choice to preserve those fundamental rights Locke talked about.
That was the core argument. The king's actions, viewed as tyrannical, necessitated the drastic step of independence.
Okay, so bringing it all together, it's really a fascinating mix. You've got these broad Enlightenment ideas about rights and government, championed by thinkers like Locke.
Uh-huh.
Then you have Paine, making those ideas accessible and urgent for everyday people.
Turning philosophy into action.
Then the Continental Congress makes the political decision, and Jefferson weaves it all together, the philosophy, the popular anger, the specific complaints against the king into this single, powerful document.
It's an incredible synthesis. And it wasn't just a declaration of independence, but a declaration of principles. Principles about equality, rights, and the purpose of government.
Principles that have echoed, haven't they? Not just in the U.S., but globally.
Absolutely. The ideas of natural rights, government by consent, the right to resist oppression, they've inspired countless movements for freedom and self-determination around the world. It's a document with truly lasting significance.
It definitely gives you a lot to think about. So for everyone listening, as you reflect on this deep dive, maybe consider a few questions. First, how would you summarize the main Enlightenment ideas you hear resonating in the Declaration? Second, can you pinpoint how Locke's concepts, natural rights, social contract, specifically shaped the arguments Jefferson made? Third, what role do you think common sense really played? How much did it fuel the fire for independence? Fourth, why does this document, written so long ago, still feel so important today? What makes it endure? And finally, thinking about King George III and tyranny, what specific things mentioned convince you that the colonists genuinely believed they were facing oppression? Just some things to chew on. Pondering these can really cement your understanding of why the Declaration came to be and why it still matters. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Yes, thank you. Until next time.